Hello everyone and welcome to Center of Light. It's good to see you on this sacred night. Every night is sacred and you have to feel it in your bones. I need to learn how to keep up with everyone. My life is getting so busy. Everyone's lives is getting so busy. Tonight I have a wonderful guest for you. We had a couple of things happen in the recent past. I tried to get on the show a couple of times and we had some boo-boos happen. Really quickly, I have a couple of announcements to make. Also, my friend Robert Harrison, thank you so much for donating these beautiful Mayan calendar pendants, which I am now giving away for a reciprocal from you of $30 donation to Center of Light and all that I do in support. Also, another order of business, Homecoming Crossing the Bridge to the Soul, my new bestseller. The links are in these forums. You can go to the top of the forums and jump seat to Amazon and purchase this. 30 years of my blood, sweat, and tears compressed. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. You will have something happen to you. How I know that? How do I know that? Because it happened to me. And I want to offer that gift to you through a shortcut, if you will. Not that there are any, but it's your level of passion for wanting said shortcut, which literally creates shortcuts. Cross that bridge to your soul, my love. Also, you can also use the same link to give me a review. Let's get down to some Center of Light Radio beeswax. One more quick announcement. If I'm speaking and I just stop speaking for about 5 seconds, it's because there is a glitch in my audio, something happening. Other people are experiencing it as well for their shows. There's a little pop in the ear and the voice goes out for about 5 seconds. So know on the front end, that's what's happening. Everyone, let's get down to some business. Let me take off these glasses. I can see and I can't with glasses. Amazing. Let me tell you about my guest tonight. She's got a name about this long. So what is that saying? It's saying she's royalty. So we're going to just call her Dr. Margaret. Tonight on Center of Light Radio, Dr. Margaret. Dr. Margaret Rogers Van Coops, Ph.D., DCH. Parentheses, I.M. has been an ordained minister and missionary of the Universal Christ Church School of Spiritualism since 1983. She is currently the head pastor and director of education for UCC. Dr. Margaret is a professor with 2 Ph.Ds specializing in medical and clinical hypnotherapy and behavioral sciences. She is also a DCH, a doctor of alternative and integrated medicine, given as a result of her pioneer research and educational courses in health, healing modalities, and subsequent publishing of her works. She has a list of accomplishments this long. I would rather just get in the trenches and find out what's happening inside that beautiful brain of hers. And life that she is living and expressing and giving to the world in this way. This is how you can find more on Dr. Margaret. I just posted her links into the forum. Welcome to Center of Light Radio.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. How you doing, sister?
Fine, thank you. I was very grateful. It is a mouthful of all the things I've done.
Did you know early on in your life that you were going to be walking this walk?
Not really, and yes, I did. I did. When you're a child, you don't have any point of view about where you're going or what you're doing. You're just spontaneous in the moment. And as soon as I could walk and toddle and talk, I was hearing spirits. So I'd tell my mom and she'd look at me like, oh, yes, thought I was an imagination, an illusion or something, playing Santa Claus or Mummy and Daddy or something. And even as late as 2008, just before she passed, I was with her and she still said, Margaret, you have such a vivid imagination. And that was her excuse all the time for whatever I was saying or doing. My sister's psychic too. So in her world, my sister was the best medium and I was the best healer.
What a combination. Did you ever work together? Like in the same session on the same situation?
A couple of times in England, but not very often because we didn't live right near one another. So whatever I was doing was very much a journey for me of very unique independence because I had conversations with spirit in my mind since I can remember. I mean, you know, they used to come in my head after the war was finishing or during it was towards finishing. And I'd be on a bus or something with my mom. And they would say, go tell that lady that Uncle Harry is fine in the oneness. And I'd like, I'm not supposed to talk to anyone, you know. And then daring devil me, rush up and go, Uncle Harry's fine in the oneness, and rush to get off the bus after Mummy. And I do remember a couple of people actually getting off the bus after us to ask me more. So it's kind of awkward when I was young, yeah. Mm. So one of the things I'm noticing is my mouth and talking is not at the same time. Is that us or me or what?
It's just how the feed is coming back to you. I'm getting it perfect as it should be, and so is the audience. But you're getting a one more passage. That's basically it's just a lag. But everything's going to be fine on playback. So what, out of all the things you do, what is, and I'm sure they're all equal, but what is your, or at least one of your favorite fields of doing all the things that you do? Good question, right?
You know, if I'm really honest, I love doing the healing. And when I'm doing it, for example, I had someone here recently, and she was on the table for 4 hours. Now, you know, people say, well, how could you lie there for 4 hours while someone's working on you? But, you know, it's such a unification kind of thing with me and the spirit guides and these hands and all my tools and their serious illness, you know, like we had liver problems and, you know, so it takes a while because I have to look at them emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and practically. And for example, one girl I was working on, I was through psychodermatherapy. That's when your fingers on the body, you feel the energy, it passes back through you to your brain, where your brain transfers that image to your consciousness. So because I know what a liver looks like, I see a liver, and in her case, I saw a tumor. And I mentioned it to her, and she said, oh my God, how did you know? I said, I can see it through psychodermatherapy. And then she said, what do you see? I said, it's benign. She said, yes, you're right. So it's nice.
So would this be also called medical intuitive?
Yes and no, but no. No, not psychodermatherapy. Something I had to name it through spirit telling me this. When a person is being a medical intuitive, they're attuning to the entire aura, not just an organ. And they're looking at a person's physical, etheric, spirit, higher mind, and soul body. And they're looking for miasmas. Miasmas are like little eddies of water, like you see when the river's going down and a couple of stones get in the way and that water's going round and round. And those miasmas usually are in the etheric body from some emotional trauma that someone's been through. And once you start removing that, breaking that up so the energy can flow, then the medium can start picking up and saying what's coming to them in the overall appearance of a body and the person.
Are you familiar with silver mind control?
Oh, yes.
That's, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but that it does actually remind me of my time at about age of 15 years old, when my father put us in silver mind control. I had a sister who had Friedreich's ataxia, and he was willing to do anything to see his daughter well. And so we enrolled in silver mind control to where we were able to go into the field and call out particular organs. And I was the first one in my family to do it, but we all did it, and it was just on target every time, down to the most minute detail of what's wrong with someone's heart. Not only do they just have a heart problem, they have an aneurysm in the heart, this, that, and all of these details. I wanted to ask you this when you were sharing with me your favorite out of the lot. Why did you choose that one? What made you choose that one? What does it feel like to be you when you're doing that particular thing as to why that's sort of your favorite?
Oh gosh, right? 900 questions all at once.
It's the same question, actually.
Still for me. What does it feel like?
Yes.
I go into an altered state of awareness, obviously, my higher self. I'm listening and talking to, say, Master Chang or Cornelius Tacitus or someone more ascended, have a whole vast army of guides behind me. So I'm listening to them and what they're saying. I'm looking at the person's body and I'm looking at the different emanations from the different parts of their body. And so I'm kind of in a it's like swimming on your back and just relaxing, because you're not working per se hard work. You're absorbing and integrating with this person to a point where whatever energy is coming through me is also balancing them. And so there's a unification going on. And by the time they get off the table, they are emotionally, mentally, physically together. I can mention things without people, obviously, because as a doctor and as a minister, whatever someone says to me is private, never goes beyond this room with me. But I can give examples where I've had some people who were breaking up and their emotion because of all what's going on in the world. And we sat down and I was counseling them for 4 hours. And by the end of that, go home and listen to all of this and then come back. And then there was another 4 hours on the table. And so a total of 8 hours, that person is entirely grounded, practical, able to deal with all issues and stand alone in the state that she wanted to be in. So there's the satisfaction ultimately, is seeing the joy on that face that someone is saying, I am that I am. I don't have to pretend I'm somebody else for that person or be somebody else for that person. Yeah.
I operate sort of the same way when I do what I do. Not so much when I do interviews, because it's a dialogue. But when I get into my chair and I do presentations with myself in the audience, it's sort of what you described. There's like this magical place, this little sandbox, this zone where the activities happen. And we all like to. Mike just dropped out. He did that thing. We all like to be entertained. So that's where the stuff is happening in there for me, and it makes me feel joyful. And like you said, the validation of said expression to other people, it's alive in there. There's something living in there, and I like the things that I do as well. And it's always awesome to me to meet someone like yourself who is doing the things they love only and nothing else.
I can honestly say that I knew by the time I was 4, I knew there was 2 things I wanted to do. One was either to be a doctor or a nurse, that's the medical field. And the other was I wanted to be an artist. I love to paint and draw. In fact, I was just saying recently on another place, I was talking about the sacred geometry with Katie Kamara on our show, where I'm not coming from the religion philosophy of the shapes and sizes. I'm coming from the anatomical, find the word, triangles and squares and cylinders and so on. So when I was very young, I raised the Kundalini with spirit in my head, and everything poured out the top of my head was cubes and cylinders and stars and wavy lines. And so it was just a whole bunch of stuff. And that was my first awareness of how the aura and the emanations of the 5 bodies combines through an orgasm through each body. You have to go through physical, etheric, spirit, higher mind, soul body. And so spirit guides were taking me through this. It wasn't something I planned to do. And each body's orgasm was very different. And by the time I actually saw all these shapes coming out, I was like, wow, I'm having a firework display, because I was in my late teenage years, I think. And of course, I didn't understand why then, but years later, when I got more involved in the energies of the auras and so on, I realized that they were taking the pain and suffering of World War II away from me. because I'd been healing so many men from my father's battalion, and there were so many people. Bomb City was London, you know, so I was seeing all that, and so they were taking away all that. So they didn't want me to have that as a foundation stone. Yeah.
You were born in England, is that right?
Yes,
What part?
1942, London.
London.
Central London.
Wow.
Right where they wanted to bomb us more.
When was your first exit? To what country, if you don't mind me asking? I'm just trying to get to know you a little better.
Okay, when did I go first? When I was 17, I went over to Switzerland. We went on a journey via Belgium, and crossed the country that way through Europe. And I had a bunch of teenagers with us. I was one of the more senior ones, so I was sort of in charge. And we had a lot of time on the on the train. We didn't have planes for us in those days. Too expensive. So we were all on the train, and the kids started asking me questions about psychic things and so on. So that was really the first time I started teaching some kids of my own age. And I had friends that I taught to over time in school, but it was a moment. I can teach the kids, so that was a growth moment. Yeah.
Having the capacity to be open as you are, to do the things you do. The question I want to ask is, how was your nighttime experience when you go to sleep?
Terrible.
Really?
Terrible. I'm an insomniac, a chronic insomniac. And I've done so much work on my body. For example, I had Parkinson's disease, hereditary DNA, manifested it at 37, died and came back. It's in my book, My Journey into the Oneness, there, all the things I've been through. But what led to that was I'd been diagnosed with the Parkinson's, and I had the rolling pill and the shaking and the neck shaking and all the rest of it. And my doctor friends gave me this pill that they said would stop the shaking. Well, it turned out it was a heroin derivative pill. And I didn't know. And every time my shakes wore off, I thought, I must have not taken one earlier. So I took another one, and without knowing it, I was ODing. And so that's what caused me to die. And of course, when I came to after they, brought me back, because I had the paddles and the whole caboodle, I remember it all. The first thing they asked me was, why did you try to commit suicide? And I remember I was so shocked. What? No. But on the other side of the fence, I knew that in a part of my lower self wanted off the planet. I had too much pain and suffering, 2 marriages that were bad, upbringing that was hard with 2 post-traumatic stress disorder families. So there was a part of me, I can't stay here, I'm saying to them. I want to leave this body. I want to go away. And they were saying, oh, no, you can't. You've just begun your work. And I'm like, don't tell me I've just begun. I've got 36 years under my belt here. I've done enough. And they finally said, well, okay, if you really want to leave. And that moment, guilt came up. I'm letting the team down. I felt their energy, their disappointment. And so, you have to give me something, and then I'll stay. And they said, we promise you will. And I did. I got in India. I was in India about 5 months later with 10 students, and we did all the ashrams, and I had some wonderful experiences in India. And it was good for me to go because my grandpa, and in fact my father, grew up in India till he was 4 years old, and he came back to England for schooling. But my grandpa stayed over in India for many years. He was a water dowser, and he found many, many wells. Get my words out. I get sprayed in my head, and I'm trying to speak of me, and they're talking in my head. Sorry. He found many water wells all over India, but he opened my mind up to imagination, for example. So did my dad with Car the snake. So I used to have nightmares every night that I got this carded snake out of my bed. These kinds of things. So I was very impressionable as a young girl, yes.
I loved India. I just truly loved it. It felt like mother energy for me. My apologies, but thank you for sharing when I asked you about your nighttime experience, because a lot of people that I talk with, I ask them that from the perspective of when they do go to sleep, what is their experience? Are they out soaring around? What was that? But I appreciate you sharing your personal experience with that. And,
well, I have that too, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you want to tell me something about it? That's the stuff I eat up.
I'll give you one example that I like to do. I would come out of body, kind of float up through the ceiling and be on the roof of my house in England. And then I'd think, where do I want to go? And on this particular occasion, I had Sister Teresa with me, who is actually Mary, Mother of Jesus, I know now, but that's how she called herself back in those days. And she got me through so many things. Amazing motherly love all the time. So anyway, she says, we're going to a special place. And it was like 4 stars to the right, 2 stars to the left, 1 star over there, and I'm here. And I arrived on this planet that was barren. And it was sort of orangey, sort of atmosphere. And somewhere in the far horizon was one remote, burnt-out tree, just scarring the horizon. And I remember looking at that. This is the first time I went there. And she's standing behind me, protecting me, and I'm waiting. And I watched this wisp of smoke, just like this, coming towards me. And then it shuddered, and it became a man. And he sat down and invited me to sit down on the rocks, and I know I was talking to him a bit, and then I said to him, why are you here in this, because I'm only a teenager, why are you here in this horrible place, all rock and no life and so on? And he just said to me, this is not what you think it is. And he put his hand down like this onto the ground, back of the hand. And as he did, a little water started pouring out of the rocks. And before my very eyes, I watched the grass grow, the flowers come out, and I was in a beautiful garden where he sat and taught me quite a few things that he wanted me to learn. And I know I went there several times for my education. And on every occasion, I was full of lots of questions. And I'd always say, I will remember it, and wake up in bed with, could only remember the going and the coming and his appearances and different things like that. But what I did hear from him on one of the occasions was that this was the last form, as far as he was concerned anyway, on this planet where spirit would come into form if they wanted to, for a purpose to share wisdom and the knowledge. And that because they're really spirit, they don't need a physical form, but we do. So we, the students, go there and get trained. and so that was an interesting way of understanding that there is a part of the spirit world that is not in the spirit world as we think of it, i.e. heaven, but on another solid planet somewhere.
Wow. I know the place that you're speaking about. I know the travel. Go down to 2 stars on the left, take the 1st star on the right. I know the description that you've offered. It's beyond time. It's like we don't think of these places, but when you have one of these type of experiences, it's like, I've always done this. This has been going on forever. It's like these conscious hiccups. We black out and we don't remember. We come back into the body. We might remember the experience like the one you just described. I've had experience of moving at God's speed through wormholes to come out to the other side, to have these 12 angels circling above my head, and when they swooshed away because of the current, I jettisoned with them and we went to the Godhead, and it just all this majesty and cosmic stuff. That's why I asked you the question initially, because I love hearing those juicy soul experiences.
Well, you're like me in that sense that you're aware enough to be able to do that. My father actually went through a wormhole at the same time as I did, because he was also my student as the years went by, and my number one fan. And he was so excited because I'd come over to visit, and he's on about he'd been through his wormhole, and he'd basically felt like he had become 1,000 pieces, and that then he saw 3 angels, and they came to him and told him something or other. I can't remember, it's not for me. And at the same time, that day, I was doing the same thing. And when I got to Dad, he said, and there was this other person, a female, who was in these flowing robes and so loving and so this and so that. And I looked at him, I said, Dad, that was me.
Wow.
And he said, oh, it makes sense then, because all I kept thinking is Wiki, Wiki, Wiki. And that was his name for me, Wiki. And because my sister couldn't say Margaret, she said Margwick, so I became Wiki. And he was thinking that, but he didn't, because he was out of body in his space, he wasn't thinking it was me standing there, he was just thinking of me. But obviously we were doing something, but neither of us could remember. Couldn't remember what they told us, just that they were great spiritual beings. Yeah.
I'm just taking this all in. It puts me, just being in your space literally puts me in that cosmic realm. It's very flighty for me. And it's like you, I want off the earth. I want to stay on the earth, but there's a part of me that truly wants to launch. And
well, I've never run away from the earth, actually. I got to be honest and say, every psychic who's really good, and I hate that word psychic, by the way, but that's the word we're stuck with. But every person that's here on this planet is in some way here to lead, to share, to be a living example. It could be some lady who's just living in a house who loves to make homemade ice cream, and everybody comes for it, and in the process she spills out a few wise words. It doesn't have to be you're famous and glorified by some thousands of people like in India. And I will say here that while I was in India, I went to many ashrams, and I can tell you there was a lot of egos. This is 1979. A lot of egos, and I could see the manipulation, and I was often, in my own space. One of the things that happened when I was down in Pondicherry was I asked my tour leader, who was going on a break, and when all the other students were in with this so-called, in quotes, guru, and I just didn't. I didn't want to be with him. He was too egotistical for me. And I shouldn't have been in judgment, but I still was, because remember, I'd gotten over my death thing and I was still recovering with all my stuff. And so I said, can I come with you? And he said, well, I'm going to where the men meet and have tea. And I said, I don't mind, please let me come with you. And he said, well, okay, blah, blah, blah. Well, we got to this little shed, really, basically, because you know what India was like. And there was one tiny little counter about 4 foot wide with a pot of boiling hot water and some mint. And so, of course, the first thing they asked him when he turned up with me was I his woman, which immediately I told him he's got to interpret everything. So he did. And I replied with, well, I'm honored that you would think I'm good enough for him, because you have to be polite, tactful. But no, I'm married, and left it like that. And then they started asking me who I was. Short version of that was I don't know exactly, but easily 40 to 50 men filled that place. And I sat on this stool, awake, channeling, Jesus and Siddhartha Buddha, and they were eating it up, and it was highly embarrassed when I was done because I couldn't remember a word that I'd said because it was them speaking, and they were kissing my feet, which I'm like, please get up. But that was their way in those times. But it was a wonderful experience for me to be able to bring, especially Siddhartha Buddha, to them, because it turned out that a lot of them were not Hindus; they were Buddhists down in Pondicherry. So,
That's perfect.
So yeah, it worked out very well. But my point of the story is not to say bragging about me; it's to say when the oneness wants to communicate, they put you where you're supposed to be so you can do it, and I've learned that I never fight my journeys. I always go along and have my head and eyes open, as it were, looking and being aware. And if someone asks me to do something, I love to do it. I enjoy my work, and I won't hesitate in sharing. So that's me.
How many books do you have out?
I think the last count was 17. I'm working on, Katie Kamara helped me put up 3 books since my husband's passed. I've also lost my ex-publisher, so Katie Kamara, who's now Reverend and Doctor, because I've helped her get all her qualifications as well, because that's also what I do. And so studies and training and different courses or whatever anybody wants to study with me has been my journey throughout my life. And of course, up until 2014 or 16, was the year my father died, 16, I was still teaching in Japan. I was flying across the ocean 3 times a year that way, Pacific, and then twice to England. So I was really on the go for 26 years, backwards and forwards across oceans, teaching and high levels of education. And I'm hoping we can do that. I palled up with Katie. We're planning on doing that, teaching people online. And I'm starting anyway with psychic development, real beginner stuff on the 8th of August. So I hope someone will come.
Is The Way to Oneness Revisited, is that the most current book?
Yeah, do you know what? Because she told me you were going to put that up, I want to show you the very first version.
Please. Oh, that's lovely.
German. Can you read it? Reisen ein bekannte Welten.
Okay.
Good at German. Okay. What happened was I really want to tell you this story because, it's very typical. I arrive in America, of course, with my husband, third husband, Stephen Van Coops, who was an angel, and unfortunately I've lost him. But what happened was it was the summer, and Spirit said to me, Christmas, New Year's, that period. They said to me they wanted me to write a book. So I sat on my bed with longhand, exercise book from school kind of book, and wrote 9 chapters between the 26th of December and the 5th of January. And then in the August, I wrote another 4 or 5 chapters. And then by the end of the year, I had written the whole thing. And having done it, then we didn't have a computer or anything. And out of the blue, my husband got to know a woman who he did some work for, and she was amazed that we didn't have a computer and trained him to use a computer and gave him one of those great big old-fashioned things that were then modern at the time, which was one she had in her office doing nothing. And so that opened the door for me and my friend to type in all the words that I'd written so that we made the book. And then after that was done, I got an invite to go to the book fair. And from the book fair, I started to understand how hard it was to get this book published. And I was sending it off to different places. and rejection, 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 and everyone was the same. What they said was, sorry, this doesn't fit our genre, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end, in writing, real human handwriting, was, I love this. It's too far advanced. We can't publish this. No one will buy it. But can I keep the manuscript for themselves? So I had a couple of years of disappointment. And then I got from Spirit, go to Germany, to the book fair. I'm like, what book fair? I didn't know anything about book fairs, you know. Out of the blue, another girl comes into my life and she tells me, oh, there's a big book fair in Frankfurt. So I do what Spirit said. Buy tickets for me and my friend Norma, fly over there, arrive. I actually go via England and then over to Germany. I get off the train, I know, late at night, nearly midnight or something. Some guy walks up to us and says, do you need a room? We said, we need a hotel. He said, oh, you won't get a hotel anywhere, but I'll find you a room. We sat with him in this hokey little 6x6 room while he called around. He got us a room in a house out in the suburbs of Frankfurt. Had no idea where we were. We didn't speak German. And we got on, he put us on the train and told us when to get off. And every stop we'd say to someone, is this the stop? Because it's written down, you know, their words are ever so long. So short version of that, the lovely woman opened up her house to us. And so we went backwards and forwards to there was like 5 big convention halls. And I targeted all the English-speaking, Australian, Canadian, languages I could speak, like French and so on. I actually found a German agent, and he was going to take me on with that book. Every time we left there, there's an ending to the story. Every time we left there, I would get this burning sensation right here, which is a Holy Spirit burning my crown chakra. And so this was the last day, and I said to my friend, I have to go in here. I don't know why, but they're not letting me get past this. Well, inside there was the German published companies. There was only about 8 companies. And there was one booth right at the back end, nobody in it. And I thought, well, it's not meant to be. And I turned away, and a man's voice said to me, have you got it? And I looked back, and here was this man in this booth who wasn't there before. And he was hiding behind packing some stuff up, apparently, which is why I couldn't see him. And so I said, yes, I do. What did someone tell you about it? And he said, that's what he said. So I rummaged around. I pulled out this manuscript, which was that fat. He took it like it was a baby. And he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he said, I will read this on the plane, and if I like it, we will publish it. That was why I went. Nothing to do with English. I realized that then, and he published it in German. I just held that up. And guess what? They didn't even tell me till much later. They published 5,000 twice of hardback, because that was the thing in those days. And then I didn't even know this, like I said till afterwards, the Berlin Wall came down. They published 12,000 softbacks that were all sold within a week in East Berlin.
That's
because
fantastic.
I have no religion.
Let me ask you, you mentioned just a bit ago, one way Spirit spoke to you was the Holy Spirit through the crown chakra burning. Is that always the case, or how does the voice of God, if you will, or Spirit, whatever people are comfortable with, how does it come in for you?
Oh, gosh.
Right.
I was 4.5.
I'm sorry. For me, it's just a powerful knowing, like someone's just prompting me, saying just, this is what you got to do.
Well, basically what happened was I was 4.5. Mum had just birthed my sister. Baby was home. I was told to go to the kitchen, pick up some rag or something and bring it back to Mum. And we had to shut all the doors, very small area. And as I'm shutting the doors, the lights go on their own. And I hear this voice, and it says, my child, you're a child of God. You will know great suffering, and you will help those who are suffering. And I'm like, sound around. Where's the voice coming from? Because there's nothing in the hallway. And who are you? I said aloud, and was that effect. And I am the one. Who is the one? All that is. What is all that is? God. I am the voice of the oneness. And today they have that as my slogan. I am the voice of the oneness, because I channel anybody and everybody that wants to speak through me. So, it's the gift I have.
Did you have to go through the process of learning to turn off the phones? Meaning, when the door opened for me, it's like I feel people. It felt like people everywhere, because all I hear is talking in my skull. Until finally, I'm sure we all get to that point for certain spiritualists. I got to the point where I was like, okay, y'all gonna have to make a deal and choose a mouthpiece, and that you all agree on and come through as one voice, because I can't do this. It's just chatter.
Well, that came with being a trance medium, so by the time I was 24, I was a trance medium, and I'd just go into a sleep mode, as it were, and then they would come in and speak through me. And at that age, I still have a high voice. You can hear this, but I talked up here in those days. My voice was very high, and I used to sing up there. I was a high soprano, and so I was in this trance state, and I was out of body in a blob in the ceiling, as it were, because you don't have a consciousness of body when you're out of body, unless you want to. I'm looking down at me, and I don't even know if I can do it, but I'm pretending. But bearing in mind, I've got this high voice. I was singing like this. Like that, and that was me. I'm not saying anything, but that kind of noise, and I had to make my mouth all funny to do that. But I don't know. But it turned out the people who were also sitting in the circle knew who this person was, who was, don't ask me now, I can't remember.
Who was it?
I think it was Flora someone, but she was a famous vaudeville singer who had that voice, and they all recognized her voice. And whatever song she was singing, I didn't know it, but she was singing the song that she was known for. So when I came out of the trance state, they were all like, wow, look what you do, and in those days it was big reel-to-reel, recorders and tape, and they had that going, and they played it back for me. And I'm telling you, I was astounded, because I couldn't do it then. I mean, my voice had changed over the years and it's dropped, but at that age, I could not lower my voice down there. But voice was, spirit was showing me the voice of the oneness. They needed to work with me. So as I channeled more and more entities over time, they changed my voice box. And you could actually hear men speaking through me. Yeah.
I've had such phenomena, different stuff, but when this all first started and the floodgate was open and I'm getting visited by God knows what and who knows what from where, I would go into these channel sessions, and I have a dear friend of mine, and just cut out. I would have these sessions at my house where I would channel. I'd close my eyes, and all I would do was surround myself in love and light. You don't want to come in here and mess with me. I'm just going to blast you with light if you're from the dark side. So I'm not interested. You're not going to get me to buy into your bullshit, basically. But I wouldn't target any particular one. And one night, very high energy, one that would actually, sort of like your description, burn you, just because of the power of the fire, the light. I was lifted off of my chair and I was turned 180. But some strange phenomena would happen. A lot of stuff with the Ouija board. I understand people are afraid of a Ouija board. Well, it's based in ignorance, so that's where your fear is coming from. And of course, if your parents perpetuate that, here's this new game, children, go have fun, play with it. When you approach an Ouija board with the intention of playing, you will get people, little monkeys that want to play back. But I've had some pretty phenomenal success with the Ouija board. In fact, this is how this actually all started for me.
My sister and I played with that. In those days, we actually made the letters on little cards, the alphabet and 1 through 10 or whatever. And then we had a wine glass upside down, and we put our one finger on it. And that thing whizzed around so fast, we couldn't even keep our finger on it, you know. And I'll give you one small example. I was asking, would I have another child? And I'd had three children. And so I'm asking, will I have another child? And it said yes. And then I said, will I have a normal delivery? And it said no. And then I said, will be something wrong? And they sort of swizzled around the yes and no and didn't really tell me anything. So I said, will it be an early birth? And it went shooting across to yes. And then I said, why? And it just went squiggling around doing nothing. So I'm hearing in my head. So I just said, well, I was hearing so premature. And it shot down to yes. Well, that boy was, seemed to be like coming. And I'd go and see the doctor. And, no, it's just you got the other kids and all the rest of it. And so going back to the week, so I'm saying, is it going to be early? And it shot down. But what it basically spelled out after that was Caesar. Well, that boy was born cesarean and early. So, and I had no inkling of that, none whatsoever. So, it just shows you what they can tell you, and they do know. And it's like now with the world at sixes and sevens, as we say in England, upside down, all going around in circles between floods and Europe and that sudden, water destroying everything, and in Holland and Germany. And, I didn't find out about that until about 5 days later. But I woke up, going back 5 days, feeling terrible and feeling like I'd just been struggling in a water fountain or something. It was so stupid. Why would I be in a water fountain? But that was symbolic. I realized once I heard 5 days later what it was. I was, as a medium and a healer, those of us will go and help those who are dying. So we were doing rescue work.
Yeah, when I put my hands on the Ouija, what is it called? A planchette? Is that what it's called? Planchette?
Yeah, planchette.
Planchette.
It's French.
Yes.
Planche is planchette.
Grey Poupon. We would use this Ouija board, and I've always seen the Ouija board as a subconscious typewriter. It's all it is. It's just a doorway. It's the same door. There's only one door, and you can, when you approach the door with whatever spirit you bring to the situation, is the spirit or spirits that's going to respond. But knowing what I knew then, how to surround the board, and like I do when I'm sleeping, don't come mess with me. I'm not the guy you want to mess with, but I would have success in the form of, when this first started, and there were 2 girls especially that were really, really powerful when they were on the board. And so we often, more so than not, let them do the moving or the participation or the channeling in that way. So my doubtful self, I knew something was happening, but my doubtful self was said, okay, I'm going to grab a book, I'm going to pull it off the shelf, and open it up to a chapter, and I put my finger on the word, and I said, what is the word I'm looking at? And it said energy. And I began to see all these patterns of these phenomena happening to people who were actually arriving to the session, just about to walk into the house. That when they walked into the house, this strange phenomena began to happen, all this alignment. You did mention a little earlier that your father was, he did a lot of divining for water. So you seem to be very well rounded in these ways of contacting spirit, be it water, be it in your family in that way, and the channeling that you do, and medicine and intuitive and all that. Yeah,
actually, it was my grandfather's. I found out more once they'd all died, because I found paperwork and so on. It was my grandfather's father-in-law, so that would be my grandmother's father, who was the original one who wrote the original little booklet on dowsing. He was the one who started it. But he didn't get fame to glory because when he taught his son-in-law, my grandpa, the father of my father, he went, he just knew this is what he wanted to do. He also worked with Carter, the guy that was working in Egypt and died. They found a grave in England, and there was two little glass bowls, like fish bowls, big, but these only small. And it was a woman's body. She was in the fetal position under a wall that they'd found. And there was a ring on her finger, which I have today. And according to my grandpa, it was not of this world. It's not a metal known here today. Anyway, the story where I'm coming from is these two bowls, Carter took one home and Grandpa took the other. And the phenomenon that happened that night in their home was very evil, very negative. And so one is in a New York museum and the other is in the British Museum. Technically, I own it with my sister. And, when I went to the British Museum recently, about 4 years ago, to ask where it was in the display unit, I was told it was down in the archive somewhere, and did I want to take it home? I said, no, thank you. But I did talk to a guard who was there, 15, 20 years before that, when it was still in one of the display units. And we were looking at it, and he comes up to us and out of his own, need to, and says, you don't want to stand by this cabinet. There's something evil in there. I know, I'm here at night, and there's footsteps and all sorts of stuff. He says, stay away from this. And I looked at him and I said, well, that belongs to our family. We're the Pogsons, and it's got Pogson written underneath it. So I guess, wherever it is, it's haunting someone down in the archives. But the one in New York, we heard the same via that family, because he died, he was a curse with the tombs and all the rest of it. So he died soon after that. But my grandma, she always used to say to me that grave was cursed, and they believed that she was not human. She'd come from another dimension, because everything going on around them at that time was like space stuff. But I went further with that, I have to say, over the years, and just throw this at you right away. Sound and light. What does that do for you, sound and light, in terms of the oneness?
You're asking me about sound and light?
Yeah,
what does it do for me? I know the physics behind it. I know that sound is the power, if we could, or that which creates the force, binds everything together, and light would be that which creates detail or form. In other words, sound is the glue that holds even the empty space of everything wherever together, and light is sort of like the blueprint, the fiber optics that creates shape and detail and brings things into manifestation. So sound would be the substance and light would be the form. That's what it does for me.
Well, I see your thinking, and I agree with you on some levels with that in science. But what I really learned, because I had alien stuff as well, so I'll put that on the shelf for a minute. What I really realized with my grandpa talking about the dowsing is when you hold your hands over one another like this, you're creating a force field between your energy coming out of your palms. Okay, and given time, you see people doing this, and they're making a ball. So
that would be sort of like the torus. That would be the torus.
Yeah, you can call it. There's so many names out there, and I just stopped trying to name everything. But it's a ball of healing energy that you're making, and the more you do this, the more you can feel the resistance in your energy as it pushes back. Well, that is friction in sound, but you can't hear it, because you're not used to listening to your aura. Nobody trained you to listen to your aura. But when you do listen, you can hear lots of little click clicks and ping ping pings and whatever, because your whole body is a very noisy thing. I mean, we're used to listening to a heartbeat or a rumbling tummy, but we're not realizing that, like when we walk across a room, you know, like I've got 2 dogs here, I guarantee if I got up, they're sound asleep, but they will hear me walk across the room, and that will bring them out of their sleep. Well, we have the same ability, but people don't realize it. So when I was going, i.e. back to this planet where this ancient being was manifesting for me, one of the things that he showed me very clearly is through fire and friction, heat, because, you know, and magnifying glass and setting something on fire. You know, he was doing all that, which was sort of Boy Scout stuff back in those days. But what he was really teaching me is that sound in its own way reverberates and can reverberate in and of itself and cause a nuclear explosion. Now, I didn't know anything about nuclear, and it was nuclei, the center of. And so when I was learning, it was like the more the friction is going on between the sound, the more it's rubbing against itself, condensing until it's so compressed that it explodes. Now, at that point, that is light. So it's transformed from sound into light. And everyone keeps saying to me, what do you mean the sound is the next energy source that we're going to use in our Aquarian age? I'm knowing that for sure. And I know that it will integrate with the magnets because that's how the spaceships fly. And the bottom line here, you know, for all of us is to understand that as much, there's always, like, we've got electricity, and then we think of a storm, you can be struck to death, or you put your finger in a socket and you can die. Okay, with sound and light, when that becomes the source that we're going to have, there's also a dangerous element in it. So if we over refract energy, light source will bend in on itself, we can blow ourselves up again. So we're yet again learning a new type of energy that will evolve us into a new state of consciousness. But yet again, it will test us to see if we know how to use it wisely, as opposed to destructive, or, let's say, from the Piscean age, controlling, manipulating, holding on to in greed. The Aquarian age is going to be more about sharing. So if we learn how to heat our houses, you know, and or cool them, depending on what we need, and run our cars on these things, we're not going to have all this fog and smog and whatever we want to talk about. But what we are going to have is electrical impulses in the atmosphere. And so now to understand it, we have to come back to a storm and think about, you're out in that storm and all your hair stands up on edge.
Sounds like 2021.
Yeah, well, that's where we're at.
Exactly.
But imagine another 150 years when they're tapping into it and using it as a source of fuel.
Thank you for joining me. We're at the top of the hour. I have some other business. I really enjoyed my time with you. What's coming down the pike for you?
I'm just focused on teaching. I want to teach the young kids and the young mums psychic development, so that they don't think they're insane.
Is there a final message you can give us? Something short? Yeah,
very brief. The oneness is you, and you are the oneness. You are a part of it. You're important to it. Don't ever say you're not. Every little energy we put out is part of the oneness. We are the oneness in any dimension.
Thank you, Dr. Margaret. I enjoyed my time.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed myself with you. Thank you.
We're going to do it again, that's for sure. Everyone, Dr. Margaret, the links are in the forums. Check out her websites, many of them from many different fields that she is a doctorate in. She's She's doing it. She's living the dream. Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard, good to see you. I'm going to probably be back on air, I say, Friday. I got a gig tomorrow night and no Thursday. So I'll be seeing you soon. I appreciate you. You're loved beyond measure. There's nothing more brilliant, more powerful that ever was, is now, or ever could be than you. You want to see what all that we aspire to looks like? Go look in the mirror. And when you see that connection, you'll be in the oneness. Peace, love, and break some rules.